Yes.
You're on now.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Apparently, we had two different chat rooms, one with the old race and one with the new race. So I hope we've all got into the right room now. There may be a few stragglers still coming in. Apologise for the technical issues. So I'm going to begin right away. I like to start these calls with an attunement, and this attunement is about the New Jerusalem. So if you'd like to take a deep breath and get comfortable where you are, and just close your eyes for a few minutes, and all you have to do is listen to the timbre of my voice. So, deep within the DNA of every human being, there lies a memory of a time when everything on this planet was very, very different from how it is today. In the words of the bard, there are more things on heaven and earth than are dreamed of in your philosophy. And the world we see around us through the five senses is but the tiniest tip of a great iceberg of consciousness. And our perception is deeply limited to a narrow band of frequencies. That is until we begin to awaken. And when we begin to awaken, so we also begin to remember. And we trigger an ancient memory of another world and another possibility. Indeed, another kind of human. A human body made up of far more subtle and refined frequencies. A body barely incarnate. A body that existed before our recorded or recordable history of a mere few thousand years. And we hold this memory of another more beautiful time deep within the living cells. And it's held in vitro, within the memory of every water molecule on our planet. So just for a moment, breathe in this memory. You were part of a wider consciousness, a more merged field of knowing, of unconditional love, of omniscient vision, a fully conscious aspect of a vast being, a being of light, a universal being, whose body is the universe itself and whose mind is merged in the flood of space-time. This is the truth of where we came from, and it's the truth of where we will one day return. This vast, expanded consciousness that connects all things and all beings into a unified field of truth. So look inside your body and look at the walls of your mind and see how your daily worries and your opinions and your beliefs form these walls. And see the walls of your cells, the walls of your deep unconscious fear. And see how deeply you've entered into this thick soup, this Maya, this limited paradigm that we call reality. And think about the world outside with its billions of human beings all believing that they're separate, all busy being individuals, all hoodwinked, all anxious, all completely asleep. And we're not who we think we are. Because when those walls one day come tumbling down, and they will, the perception of the totality will open up once again inside your being, illuminating your mind, shattering your heart into 1,000 glistening shards, and transmuting your baser instincts into a higher purpose as you come into alignment with the higher harmony of the cosmic mind and its single-pointed will. So breathe into this ache, this paradox of being asleep and yet also half remembering this distant truth, like the sun hidden somewhere behind the clouds. And one day, as those clouds begin to part, humanity will be transformed into its highest possibility, a unified field, a symphony instead of a cacophony, a synarchy instead of a tyranny, an experience of rapture instead of an experience of suffering. This process of awakening, this time of collective flowering, is just now at its earliest dawn. The very first rays of light of the higher will are just now emanating through the hearts of those who are ready. So we stand at the cusp of a new epoch, the final epoch, the unraveling of the weave of our suffering and the coalescence of a new spirit and humanity. Yes, a time of awe is coming, a time of chaos, a time of transfiguration, a time of wonder, and a time of remembering. So place your hand softly on your belly and listen to the echoes of this great memory. It's why you're here. It's why you know exactly what I'm talking about. Even though your mind may scream in confusion at times, and your heart and the cells around your core, deep within your belly, it knows the truth that I'm speaking here. And those cells know the truth of these words, the truth of the New Jerusalem, the highest possibilities of humanity, preparing once again to awaken and to build a new kind of world out of the ashes of the old crumbling paradigm. So breathe this truth deep into your belly and softly open your eyes and get settled. And I'll tell you the full story from the beginning. So, welcome everyone to this transmission. This is going to be a good one. It's very esoteric. So I'm going to present it to you on various levels as a story, an allegory, or a metaphor, but also, like we just touched into, a cellular reality. So I'd like to ask that you pay attention to what's going on inside your body as you hear it. There are truths that can't be fathomed only by the left brain with its need for linear time processing. But even so, this story, like every good story, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. But what's important to know, really, that at one level, is that it's all occurring now. And I'm also telling you this tale for a good reason. It gives us a notion of our exact position within the great script, and it makes sense of many of the feelings and the knowings that so many of us harbor deep inside. So it's a reminder, but also it connects us to a great ideal, the notion that the universe unravels according to a great plan. And once we can see our lives in relationship to that plan, much of our confusion about life can simply drop away. And I'm also going to be sharing two important graphs that will help to ground the truths and to help us visually follow what I'm sharing. I hope you find these inspiring and helpful. And those of you who are new to the Gene Keys, you're going to hear quite a lot of terminology, esoteric words that you may not understand. And we are going to put the glossary of these terms. It's the glossary from the back of my book called The Glossary of Empowerment, which has all the terms that appear in the Gene Keys in it. And glossaries are usually quite boring things, I know. But trust me, this is a really, really good glossary. Every word is described in a very powerful cellular way. So we're going to put that on our website, and there's a link to it, I believe, on the page somewhere that you're looking at. If it's not there at the beginning, it'll be there by the end, and you'll find it anyway. So, the transmission. It's quite a long one, this, much longer than the last one I did, so please enjoy. Involution versus evolution. Now, modern science gives all its attention to the left brain, to the yang way. And this is the way of evolution. It begins at the base, and it works its way upwards in understanding. It's logic, it's progression, It's evolution. And this is the view that we've inherited at every level in our society. And our whole way of life is constructed around the idea of achievement, of growth, of reaching out. And yet there is another view. There's another way of looking at the world. And that's the yin way, through the right brain. And I call this the way of involution. So instead of beginning from nothing, from not knowing, you begin from everything. You begin from truth. You begin from the end and you work backwards. It's a wizard's way. How can you do that? How can you do that? I hear you say. How can you start at the end? The end hasn't occurred yet. But it has. In another dimension, this universe has already lived out its final natural conclusion. So involution begins with the premise that the universe is alive and that everything has a purpose and that everything is imbued with consciousness and there is a plan that unites it all. And this is not, of course, a supposition. It is a felt truth. You either feel it or you don't. Some people feel it once and then they forget it. Some people keep coming back to it. Some of us carry it with us all the time. So the way of involution begins with this right brain sinking into the whole. So in evolution we begin with matter, and with involution we begin with spirit. And of course the best view is to see from both angles. So the idea behind involution is that everything began with spirit, just like in the Bible or the creation myths. And that spirit then progressively descends into matter, and as it descends or involutes, so it enlivens and vivifies the form. It imbues it with a level of consciousness. And this means that at the very end of the story of involution, everything, all matter, even the rocks, the densest particles, are imbued with consciousness. And the densest forms come last. Guess who that is? The spiral of time. So we can have the first of the two images, graphs, and Anton. Might take a little while just to pop up there.
Just bear with me, Richard. I'm just getting it now.
Absolutely. The spiral of time. There we go. I hope you can see that. You can see from this image of the spiral arc, which represents the passage of time. You can see that if you follow it from the top, that's the arc of involution. And if you follow it from the bottom, in other words, the beginning of the spiral, as it were, it's not really the beginning, but then that's the arc of evolution. And what's really interesting, and we're going to look at this later, is that time changes within this arc. In other words, it's compressed at one end and expanded at the other. So from the point of view of evolution, everything takes a very, very, very long time, millions and billions of years. Whereas from the involutionary view, time is experienced as relative to the frequency of consciousness. So from within the highest spiritual level, time is seen completely as an illusion. And as the frequency of consciousness becomes higher in you, so time appears to move more quickly. So I'm going to talk more about this later. The 7 root races and the 7 subtle bodies. In the ancient teachings of India, there is a set of transmissions that concern this story of involution, and they're called the 7 root races. And the root races refer to the stages in consciousness of our planetary organism. So Gaia, as the spiritual essence, progressively incarnates down into the form. And each race also has a name. Some of you may have heard these names. And for the moment, I ask you just to let go of any ideas you may already have about them. So here you can see the root races and their names, the Polarian, the Hyperborean, etc. Very funky names. And you can also see how they relate to the 7 subtle bodies also of the ancient teachings. The physical, the monadic, the atmic, the buddhic, these 7 dimensional bodies. And so when you look at the first root race, which is called the Polarian, you see it relates to the monadic body. And I know that these words are new and they may be strange sounding to a lot of you, so bear with me. And by the way, you can read all the 7 subtle bodies, you can read all about them in the 20-second gene key in my book, which really goes into them in some depth. Plus they are expanded upon in this glossary, the Glossary of Empowerment, each one of them. So when you do read about them, or if you have already, you will have learned that the monadic body represents the subtle field of the totality and its impulse of divine will. So this is the impulse that begins the whole show. This is the force behind the Big Bang. This is the word of God saying, let there be light, or whichever metaphor you prefer. And this is where we're going to begin our story, with the first root race, the Polarian. So the first root race is about the creation of the primal sacred geometry of life, the lattice of space-time, the principles of number and form, as it becomes the elements, the crystals, the minerals, the rocks. This is the fiery beginning of the earth, the tectonic plates moving, the volcanic eruptions, the divine spark animating the basis of matter, coalescing the form of our planet, and even animating the beginning of animate life, such as bacteria. This is the Polarian consciousness, the divine spark that begins the story. You could also say that this is the forming of the planet by the great archangels. See, this is me jumping to the involutionary view. An archangel is a word that we have for a stage in which the spirit is stepped down in vibration. And you see that you'll have these levels and layers. It's the arcing of consciousness into those subtle entities that will govern our evolution and our involution. So remember, when you're looking for matter, as a scientist, for example, you see matter. And when you're looking from spirit, like a mystic, you see spirit. So yes, I hear you ask, there are angels. The second root race, the Hyperborean. I love this word. There are all kinds of legends around these terms. And this phase of our involution relates to the atmic body, or the atmic plane. And that's the plane corresponding to the divine mind. This is light. The divine mind is light. This is what happens as the clouds clear. The continents begin to form. The fire and the brimstone phase comes to an end. And light creates photosynthesis, which in turn creates the Garden of Eden, the blue and the green, the atmosphere, the wind, the weather. Boreas, Hyperborean. Boreas was the god of the winds. Rain, water, rivers, oceans, most importantly, plants. And again, subtle beings oversee each stage of our evolution. It's not that they're even really beings, that's one way of seeing them. They're aspects of the unified field which animate matter. And again, we may call them angels, the angels of the elements, the angels of the earth, the devas. The quintessence of each plant has a deva, a spiritual presence. And if you're very sensitive, or you've ever taken a hallucinogen or a sacred plant, you will see these beings, you will meet them, you will hear them. Yes, I hear you ask, they do exist. This is the Hyperborean root race. Follow the spiral a little further, you come to the third root race. It's called the Lemurian. And this corresponds to the Buddhic body, the divine heart. Involutionary force is stepping down. And this layer of consciousness, as this comes into the form, So we see the first creatures coming out of the waters. All the legends of Lemuria always concern the waters. So fish, amphibians, reptiles, then birds and mammals. These are the creatures that populate Eden. Eden, a phase in our past when all creatures are far more imbued with consciousness than they are today. They're all unified in the same field, so it's quite different. And this is a long, long time ago I'm talking, way before our recordable history. This is when the continents were all one supercontinent. They called it Pangaea, or we call it Pangaea. Nice word. So the Buddhic plane is about fluorescence, the replication of the divine heart into the myriad beautiful forms and creatures. And into this Eden consciousness also, of course, steps, you got it, Adam and Eve, or the cosmic human, a much subtler creature than the one we are today. And you have to realize that this is all so distant. It's not like there can be any fossil records of this time, at least not the creatures, just the phases that we can read through the rocks, so through geology. And all these creatures are now dissolved completely. And ironically, we burn them for our fuel. They're our coal, they're our oil, they're our gas. Isn't that an irony? Anyway, we see the birth of an early form of human being in this Lemurian period, and one I imagine, or I see in my contemplations, my meditations, far more beautiful and elegant than the one we see today, and in perfect harmony with the creatures, with the animal spirit of the world. I mean, if you go into the oldest stories in the world, which are the Aborigine stories of Australia, going back over 40,000 years, because it was an island. These are unbroken oral tradition. You will hear tell of the mythical dream time in which the animal and the human spirits are interchangeable. They're all merged. So when you listen to one of these Aboriginal stories, that's what you get. Humans become animals and animals become humans, and you can't tell which is which. That's the Lemurian root race. Next stage of the spiral, the fourth root race, the Atlantean. The causal body, and this is where it gets interesting. You know what's coming, I'm sure. The causal plane, it's really the higher mental plane, the plane of higher intuition, of the archetypes, of sacred knowledge, where the myriad facets of consciousness are seen in the higher mind of humanity. So now humanity becomes more aware of itself, less merged in a way, slightly less merged. We're given more responsibility, if you like. We become aware that we have power. And the Atlanteans, we all have heard about the Atlanteans. I can't believe I'm talking about the Atlanteans. They formed the first enlightened civilizations, following the principles of the sacred geometry that they could see and they could feel in their heart. And they were building a vehicle for the higher consciousness to fully incarnate into, for the core fractal, the Godhead, to come right down into the garden. And it happened. The Godhead came down as a collective, as a synarchy, into the garden. And in evolutionary terms, humanity at that point evolved a vast awareness center in the solar plexus center, an information network through which collective truth could be instantaneously transferred throughout the whole. Oh, and I almost forgot to say, we were also immortal. So the synarchy, a great word at the heart of the Gene Keys, that self-organizing principle of higher harmony, it thrived and it evolved here in this period until, and the best way to describe this is when you consider what happens when a great river meets the ocean. You know how it opens up into a great delta? Well, all the sediment gets kind of churned up, and the pristine pure waters of the river and the lovely blue water of the ocean become muddy and opaque. Well, this is what happened in the Atlantean period. The forces of involution and the forces of evolution met halfway, and the form principle began to tarnish the spirit. And you know what happened? The Godhead withdrew. I mean, it's a story, you know. The synarchy, this higher network of angelic frequencies, withdrew back to the inner planes. And we call this the fall. You can see it, and you'll see it in the next slide when we come there. And if I could give this fall a single name, I would say it was vanity. Vanity. The belief that you're separate. The belief that you can act and not have to take responsibility for your actions. So purity became vanity as consciousness continued to descend into the form, and our evolution was effectively rebooted at that point. And funnily enough, this fall coincided with a period of cataclysms. You see, it was all part of a plan, one story. And these cataclysms, asteroid impacts, obliterated all but the most minute forms of life. And they completely reshaped our planet. A reboot. And gradually the continents moved apart. Dinosaurs came and went. And one day, miraculously, life began again, and with a completely new and different direction. The fifth root race, the Aryan. In the New Age, you hear a lot of weird and wacky things, and one thing I found myself thinking about recently concerns the way in which DNA functions. You see, modern DNA is the same as ancient DNA. It's the DNA that connects us back to these ancient memories. It's the only thing that survives. So I found myself contemplating this, and if we have the same DNA as they had, why were they so different? And I came to this realization that some of these New Age propositions are actually probably correct, because they say that more of our DNA was activated back then, as though more strands were involved. So my sense, this is my sense, is, and from my higher intuition, is that our DNA was utilized by consciousness in a different way. And my intuition tells me that the familiar double-stranded DNA we know about today is actually a limiting structure. Because whenever nature produces a duality, it entails death and decay. Dualistic systems are a dead-end street. What you need is a triple system. Anyone who knows me knows I love trinities. A triple system allows for transcendence. And actually, it's not that I'm obsessed with trinities, it's that they are just everywhere throughout creation. They're the holographic reflection of the spiritual cosmos. So anyway, I did a little research into the triple helices, the possibility of that, and it seems that they have been proposed and even created. And they do indeed allow for the body to localize specific mutations in the body. And that's incredible. And it's being explored as a possible direction for dealing with things like cancer at its very root. So if the body had triple helices, and by the way, most geneticists and scientists say it's impossible, which is why, you know, I like the concept. But if it did, then the body would have an inbuilt ability, a capacity to eradicate diseases as and when they crop up in the system and regenerate tissues and organs. And that means that potentially we wouldn't have to die, at least not of illness and not of old age. So the fall was about becoming mortal. It's about death and identification with the form. If you live forever, you don't identify with the form. So the Aryan human, the sixth race, is not just a new human, it's a new breed of all creatures. This is the evolution that we know, that Darwin postulated. And the creatures are different too. Now some of them bite. So it's interesting to me that certain creatures retain the guardianship of ancient knowledge according to the shamanic lineages. So usually these have been the insects or the reptiles like spiders or the snake. And such creatures may well have actually been the survivors of the impacts, which is why they carry the memory for us. And of course, it's why there's always a snake at the root of things. Anyway, the modern man, Aryan man, is polarized on the mental plane. This is the mental body. So we've developed our brain so that spirit can explore itself mentally. It can explore the realm of matter through the dualistic brain. And we've explored through science, and we've explored through religion. And do you ever have that feeling now that the exploration is coming to a close, kind of? I mean, we've proved through logic that there's nothing but energy, that we are nothing but energy. And we've also proved that we're all one through the discovery of DNA. We're the same as all the creatures around us. We're all one family. We have the same DNA. And mentally, we now know this, but we don't feel it yet. We don't feel it because we don't act from it. Not as a species, some of us do. But the next stage is about feeling it. The God-man. Before we go there, I want to mention about the God-man. It's about the ideal behind involution. Even though there was a fall, there's always been this ideal of the perfect human. We're driven by it. We're driven by the memory of it. And we also remember the fall. Our indigenous cultures have woven it into their creation myths. The flood, the deluge, the fire from the sky, whatever form the legend takes. It's actually based on a cellular memory that we all carry. And of course, the plants carry the memory, which the shamans also discovered. And they found exactly which plants contain the master transmissions. So the ideal of the perfect human cannot be repressed. It's built into our evolutionary curve. And as the spirit descends deeper into the form, so the matter ascends. The matter becomes more refined, more rarefied, and more aware of the spiritual reality. And this is why there have always been the masters, even in the Aryan period. Those rare beings who have flowered, whose consciousness somehow awakened almost prematurely. And of course it wasn't premature. It's just that you can't repress the ideal, the divine idea. It's as though you're trying to hold all these basketballs underwater at the same time, and every now and again, one of them just pops up through the mire, through the net. So modern humans are a manifestation of a great illusion. The illusion of death, the illusion of time. And everything we seek, whether it's money, whether it's health, whether it's sex, love, happiness, it's the same divine impulse seeking its source, seeking the light, seeking to return. And that just about brings us up to date. We've arrived at the red dot on the graph, the "you are here" button. And you can see that the next phase of our evolution, the 6th race, it's begun already. You can see we're a little far in there. We leave the rat race and we begin the 6th race. And this is called the Trivian root race. That's my word, by the way, as is the 7th race, the Pangaean. The other ones come from the esoterics. The cycle of the yugas and the flow of the epochs. Here we have the second slide, if you want to put it up there, Anton. I hope you're still with me. I know it's a lot to take in, and it's a fantastic story. And I'm going to pause a little bit in the story just to weave in a new thread. And this thread lends a great depth and a time flow to the story. And it's called the cycle of the yugas. And the yugas are an ancient tradition from the Upanishads, the Vedas of India, probably the oldest form of written sacred knowledge available to us. And the ancients knew then about these great cycles and these epochs of the root races. So this isn't new information, but it is a new way of synthesizing it at a new level. So I should also say here that there are armies of pundits with opinions about how the yugas work and calculations made from astrology and the precession of the equinoxes and where they stretch from and dates, etc., etc. Whoa, I'm not here with calculations or opinions. This is wisdom that I've felt in my being, in my body, and that came to me as I was preparing for this transmission. And personally, I actually don't find it helpful to put exact dates to these things, but I know that the logical left brain mind needs to know for certain. But you're not going to. Well, probably not. I think this is a wisdom that's designed to be unlocked by the causal plane, by the higher intuition that every human being has. So the ancients proposed that there are these four great epochs known as the yugas. They're called the Satya, the Treta, the Dwapara, and the Kali yugas. And these are vast spans of time. And as I said, many people have actually tried to calculate those times, and there may be a way of doing that, but we don't need to. What we need to know is where we are. That's the key. So in this image, you can see what I've done is I've laid out the yugas superimposed on the root races so that you can follow the spiral arc of time. And it's also color-coded to try and make it clearer. So the first yuga is called the Satya yuga, and it's known as the time of absolute virtue. It was the time of utter peace as the divine higher bodies incarnated onto the earth plane. And you can see, by the way, that the yugas intersect the root races in interesting ways. They don't just land, they don't correspond exactly. There's a lot to contemplate in this graph. So, for example, when the Treta Yuga, which is the second epoch, began, this time coincides with the later fall. You can see the fall over on the right. And it's an earlier echo of the fractal. So in a certain sense, there was an earlier fall. But this earlier fall took place on the inner planes. And when you read the ancient Hindu texts, they talk about the battle between the demons and the gods during the second yuga. So there are levels and levels and levels to this map. And if you know anything at all about Tibetan Buddhism, you will see all these stages or bardos mapped out. The formation of the hell realms and the heaven realms and all the realms in between. Their bandwidths, their dimensions of frequency. They exist. Anyway, the third yuga is known as the Dwapara yuga. That's the epoch in which we fell from grace, as I described earlier. This is the Atlantean age in which it's said that Krishna was born. And Krishna here relates to the incarnation of the Godhead, or the synarchy, as I was talking about earlier. But as the epoch changed, Krishna, the representative of the Godhead, returned to his abode in the mythical kingdom of Vaikuntha. And so the synarchy, this higher collective consciousness, withdrew, creating the split between vanity and purity. The gods remained pure and distant, and us vain humans, we stayed down below, left to our own devices and our own evolution. And we all know that story. God's up there. We're down here. You see how this great map explains so much of the evolution of human consciousness? And those of you, by the way, who know the gene keys can look into the 12th gene key to find this played out. It's known as the Ring of Secrets. It contains a lot of secrets. Vanity, discrimination, purity. And then, of course, comes the yuga that many of us may well be familiar with, the Kali yuga, the age of denial, of suffering, of vanity. This is the darkest epoch, when we move furthest away from our origins. At least it appears that way. But looking at this map, you can see that actually that's not true. We're not as far away as we think. We are, in fact, nearer to the truth of our origins than we might imagine. So these yugas, these great epochs, are vast spans of time that simply give us another framework to contemplate alongside this root race story. The sixth race. I've got there. You have to do the beginning of the story because you've got to have the build-up, the trivium. So we come back to our main storyline with this new thread woven in. The sixth race is when the spiritual consciousness reaches down into the astral body of humanity. And the astral body is our emotional body. It's our desire nature. You know, this is why the symbol of the gene keys is the dragonfly, because the dragonfly represents the sublimation of our desire nature from the water element to the air element by means of the solar fire. That's how a dragonfly appears. So the dragonfly is a great symbol of the sixth race. And we're entering an epoch in which human beings are going to finally find out what the word Tantra really means. Tantra refers to the sublimation of desire or sexual essence into spirit. As I said, we're going to finally feel our oneness again, but we're also going to have to go through some pretty serious purging. Our lower desires are going to be alchemically sacrificed for the sake of the whole. And we're going to see the futility of our yearning for pleasure and eventually recapture this idea, this ideal of heaven on earth. And by the way, all of this is written about in the 55th Gene Key in my book, in case you don't already have a copy of the book. I fully recommend it. And I know all this sounds fantastic, but it's built into the story. You can already see this beginning with the New Age and the global movement towards holism. The Trivian human has begun. The Trivian human is a transcendent human. Trivium, it means the triple way, the transcendent way, beyond the duality. We're going to rediscover our cities. We're going to rediscover our immortality. We humans are going to mutate. And you know who the culprit is? Solar Plexus Center. Remember I said how that center fully evolved during the Atlantean period? Well, that means that it's already fully evolved inside us. You should think about that. It's just switched off. It's concealed. It's behind a wall. So many of us doing this spiritual work, we can feel this, like this vast light hidden behind this veil, this basketball held under the pressure of the water. Why? Yeah. And soon the veil's going to come down and that ball's going to fly up. And it won't come down in all of us all at once. It'll come down first of all in just a few of us as the synarchy descends, as the core fractal incarnates once again. And when the veil does come down, it will reveal a fully equipped solar plexus awareness that connects us to the unified source. The solar plexus is called the solar plexus because it's like a sun. It's a wormhole. It's a white hole to the core of creation. It's the source of the pure light, the light of consciousness, the navel. So there's going to be a sudden group awakening. And you can see the early tremors of it already. The Kalki avatar. In the final phase of the story, if you look at the graph, you can see something rather odd occurring. There's this final period as the sixth race incarnates, and it's known as the epoch of the avatar, the Kalki avatar. And the Kalki avatar refers to the return of the core fractal of the Godhead. You see how the sixth race begins again at the beginning, where the first root race began? Look at that. A great sage of the last century called Sri Yukteswar, he proposed an amazing addendum to the idea of the Yuga cycles. He said that once the cycles have completed with the Kali Yuga, then they unravel again in reverse in a fractal pattern. And he did a deep research into that. And I've taken that impulse as the inspiration for my understanding of this end time. It's much simpler than his. And it's a bit like one of those amazing Shakespeare plays when you've got to act 4 and everything is chaos. The wrong people are in love with the wrong people, the baddie's in charge, the good ones are locked away, and you're thinking, how the hell is all this going to resolve itself in the last act? And of course it does, as the thread of the story unravels and creates this rush of understanding and harmony and resolution. And it's the same with us. But because of the time cycles, it's different. In the tradition of the yugas, as you get nearer the end, each yuga intensifies in suffering, but decreases in time. So when you get to the last cycle, the sixth race, where we are now, we go through each of the 4 cycles in reverse. So we live through a mini Kali Yuga, the dark phase, which we're just now coming to the end of, happily. The thing that dictates the Kali Yuga is the distance consciousness has traveled away from the spirit. So this is really the age of materialism. We're so deeply entrenched in the Maya, in the illusion of the material world, and yet something else is also occurring, at the same time, because science has reached something of an impasse, because religion is crumbling, because our obsession with the material realm, with money, has peaked. We also see the spirit returning, but it's coming subtly, and it's touching down in all kinds of unusual places. And you can see again that we're at another junction between the Kali, the mini Kali, and the Dwapara age. But remember, they're moving in reverse order. The weave of the Maya is unraveling. And look at the greater cycle. Look at what happened the last time the Kali Yuga turned into the Dwapara Yuga. It was when the mythical fall took place. I hope you're still with me. You can always watch this back again. So we're about to become unfallen. We're about to go back through the fall. We're going to have a breakthrough in reverse. And the wisdom of the Atlantean root race, the fully developed awareness system in the solar plexus, it's all going to become available to us. And when the frequency gets higher, the memory comes back. And then the DNA mutates, and the time to the 0 point at the top of the spiral gets less and less. I don't know how long it's going to take in evolutionary years, but what we do know is that the great early yugas depict hundreds of thousands of years. But then time is being compressed and condensed hugely as the sixth race comes online. It's almost as though each person who awakens kind of digests a bit more time, and the whole space-time continuum itself gets compressed and shortened and flattened. So in the mini Dwapara Yuga, our current cycle that we're just beginning, we have a lot of cleaning up to do. And we should be clear about what I'm saying here. I'm talking about a time of cities. I'm talking about a time of superheroes. Why do you think that the youth of today, and most of us, are so obsessed with these superpowers, these superheroes? Why do you think our movie screens are pregnant with them? Because we are pregnant with them. Because they're coming back. Cities create mass awakenings. They speed up everything, and you better believe they exist. There's nothing like an instant healing or a miracle to change people's minds about what's possible. But you see, we've been in this phase where they haven't been really possible except through those few beings that came in at that frequency. We've forgotten their legends. We don't believe that stuff anymore. Except some of us do. We remember it. We live in a magical world populated by beings who want to work with us and through us. And we only have to open up to those frequencies, and they'll come back and they'll work with us. They're here. The seventh root race. I'm almost there. The Pangaean. Ready for the finale? The finale is extraordinary. When we finally get to heaven on earth, you know how long it lasts? 1 second. 1 moment. It only needs to last for a moment. Infinity is found in an instant. This is planetary ascension. This is when all the different branches of the evolutionary ladder come into deep harmony. The Pangaean race, a single family. It's when spirit utterly infuses the physical plane, and the body of humanity can no longer remain in its current form. It's what synarchy is, everything perfectly harmonized. And of course there must be a surprise. There must be a sequel. It must be a trinity. So we find ourselves born again into the beginning of another higher evolution in an even greater body than we can imagine. But that's another story for another time. So it was a short finale. I hope you all enjoyed that. I have come to the end of the transmission for today. And we will now open up for questions and answers, and you can ask questions about anything I've just gone through or anything to do with the gene keys. Anything goes here. and you can type your questions in.
Richard,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Whilst we wait for the delay, there's one question I promised I would ask you that came through,
Yeah.
and it's to do with the word Aryan
Yeah.
and the negative energy that carries for many people. I wonder if you'd like to
Yeah.
just say something about that. Thank you.
Yes, it's true, isn't it? It does carry a negative connotation. It's not my word, incidentally. It's a word that comes out of the esoterics, and in honor of the esoterics, I kept it in there. But it's been muddied, but we've been muddied. And so it's not really surprising to me that it has that connotation and that cultural negativity attached to it. I hope you're not, you needn't be offended by the word, because it's a word that comes out of the esoterics. That's all I can say. You know, it is a word that before it fell, it was just a word, but then it got this connotation that came obviously culturally through the Second World War and other times. So yes, apologies for the word. It's not mine. I left it in there because it seems like the right word, to be honest. So apologies to anyone who's offended by it. It was never intended by me or whoever came up with the word in the beginning as a negative word. So, questions? I'm finding it hard, Anton, to hold these questions still enough to read them. So if you've got any, to just fire at me.
Okay, let's find some. Okay, why did we fall? Why the illusion of suffering? From Tracy.
Why did we fall?
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be a very good story if there wasn't a fall. That's one answer. I don't mean to be flippant. Because it's like I explained, matter and spirit had to meet, and where they meet, exactly in the middle, there is this fall. It's not really a fall. It's like in the Gene Keys, the shadow is not really a negative thing, even though we feel it as pain. It's simply an aspect of that fall. And if we don't resist it, the shadow, then it's something that turns into a gift. And it's the same with the fall. It's just a greater manifestation of the totality's shadow. Where there's light, there's shadow. And so it's a part, an aspect of the ongoing story. I hope you can kind of get a sense of that.
Right. Let's find another one. When will the next race kids start being born? I think she means the next race of children.
Well, they already are being born, and you might say that we are some of them. And as they continue to be born, whether you call them the indigo children or anything, the techno children, they're everywhere. I mean, I'm amazed by what the modern technology is doing. We have no idea. I think I mentioned this. I don't know if it was in one of my courses recently. I mentioned this recently that if you think about a baby in the womb and how incredibly open and porous it is to frequencies and vibrations, and then you consider now we live in the internet culture and the wireless culture, think about all that information traveling through that fetus. imprinting that fetus. I mean, really think about that. Every Beatles song ever written going through that fetus. Every book on the internet going through that fetus. All the stuff. I mean, if you can pluck it out of the air with your phone, it's in the air. It's there. So it's all there, and it's passing through us, and we are imprinted with it. So children born, I mean, there's a lot of negativity about the wireless stuff, and I don't have an opinion on that, especially. But what I'm saying is that we are imprinted in a new way. So these children are coming out with a global mind, with an internet mind, and they didn't know anything before that. They didn't know that they don't know another way. They only know the superheroes. They only know all that stuff. That's what they're imprinted with. It's their world that's coming. So they are progressively getting different.
Okay. This one's a good one from Yvonne. How do you live around so many as someone aware when the rest are sleeping? And I'm not quite sure I understand this, but and does defend being asleep?
So I'm not quite sure I understand it. It might be a bit like in the film The Matrix, if you've seen it, which most people have, where the guide comes to the young guy and says, would you like to take the red pill or the blue pill? And the red pill will lead down the rabbit hole of awakening, and you may not like what you see. And the blue pill, if you take it, you'll go back into the Maya, back into the sleep, and you'll be fine, and you'll never remember any of this. It's up to you which pill you want to take. And of course, the pills are symbols, and they're not real, but they also are. And those that wish to take the blue pill, we have to honor them. And when they're ready to take the red pill, if they're ready, they'll take the red pill. But it's not something that we need to worry about. It's something that we have to just find a way to accept that inside ourselves, and find that when you're working with the gene keys, for example, you can see the shadow at play in people. You can see the collective shadow at play in the world. But it doesn't mean you should overly dwell on it or worry about it. The place to put your attention is on the siddhi and the gift, and just hold the awareness of the shadow. I said last webinar, 10% on the shadow, 90% on the gift and the siddhi, on the higher frequencies when you're working with the gene keys. And that's the correct balance. So when you look at those people, see their higher evolution. Try and see inside them the higher components, the higher frequencies, hidden, dormant, asleep, and just hold that frequency around them. And then you will be creating a magical field and the highest possibilities that they may wake up. But that's the most you can do.
Okay, I like this question. It's asking, is there a special gene key which best describes a nation? As in, some countries belong to zodiac signs. And this person feels that some nations are a bit hit by shadow frequency more than others.
I wonder about whether certain gene keys could be applied to certain nations. I certainly feel that sometimes. I feel like, oh, if you I can tell you what my nation's gene key is because I can feel the essence of it. But I'd have to think, you could tune in. Someone could do that who's deeply immersed and embodied in the gene keys as a playful contemplation that could be quite revealing, because if you saw the gift and the higher essence of that country, you would also see its particular shadow and the flavor of its shadow playing out. And yeah, it's an interesting one to kind of dance with. Yes, certain, but I wouldn't say that any nation has more of a shadow than any other nation. That's not the truth. The truth is that we're all one connected connectivity. There are nations that are less evolved materially, but often some of those people are more evolved spiritually because they're more open and they're more loving, and because they have a simple life, and their approach to life is different from the worried well of the West. So it's interesting, it's a good question. Play with it is my answer.
A question from Alexa. Any solar plexus exercises you recommend?
Yes, I'll do some in a minute. After I usually give a little bit of I've been giving a bit of homework. It's not really homework, but it's something to do that, yes, that kind of brings this alive. I mean, anything that you do to do with the belly, you should do very softly and very, very gently. You should approach your solar plexus with the gentlest touch, and you should approach anyone else's solar plexus with the very gentlest touch, non-invasive, non-ego, completely just the listening hand. And just the way that you place your hand on your own belly or on someone else's belly, if you place it simply with listening, simply with empathy, with no agenda whatsoever, it is a very, very powerful thing to do, because you're touching your core or you're touching someone else's core. And just placing your hand there with awareness is a very powerful and very simple thing to do. And particularly when you feel upset or sad or depressed or in the thrall of a shadow, that's a really great thing to do. Just hold yourself and maybe stroke yourself there. I mean, circles, spirals following the digestive tract are a really nice thing to do. I mean, I'm giving you very physical, gentle exercise. I'm doing it now as I speak, and it's a really nice thing to do. Just follow the clockwise motion of the digestive tract, and you soon create a frequency of warmth and tenderness and acceptance, self-acceptance inside your body, especially if you do it for a while. I mean, if you did that for an hour, I would guarantee you may have a mini mystical experience. Most people wouldn't do that for that long, but if you did it and you did it with real awareness, you'd have a very powerful experience. So maybe try that. I'll talk more about the solar plexus in a minute.
Jean says, I'm often more drawn to gene keys that are not in my profile, especially the 12th gene key. Should I follow the pull of the gene keys or my gut?
Ha! Isn't it the same thing? If you're drawn to them, it sounds like your gut is leading you to them. And so I would invite you, yes, to play with them like that. I mean, there's nothing like following the golden path, because it has a very specific awakening sequence. And there are certain points in there that we need to reach gene keys that we don't like, or that we don't fully get, or that we don't resonate with. And there's a reason that we don't resonate with them, because we should resonate, with every single one, because we are a complete human. So we have every single one of those aspects of consciousness within us. So if there's one that we are avoiding, or we don't understand, or confuses us, or we don't quite relate to, that's a really key one to go into. But at the same time, if you feel drawn to other ones, like the 12th gene key you mentioned, then by all means also follow that strand and see where it leads you. There's no rules in this. But that can be you can weave that into your golden path process at the same time. Perhaps those are qualities that you need to help you tackle the ones that aren't so friendly. So it's okay to go outside the box and then come back into the channel.
Okay.
Yes. I've seen one here saying, I find it very hard to imagine my desire for sex disappearing. Yes, it's not so much about the desire for sex. It's about our yearning to find something out there. anything out there. It's through the senses that we are addicted to. We distract ourselves constantly from our suffering, from our pain, because we don't like to feel it. So when you develop the habit of, for instance, meditation or contemplation, you develop the habit of looking into whatever is there. And the first thing that you certainly will find is a lot of discomfort inside you, especially if you go into your belly, as I recommend in your contemplations. You just take your awareness down into your belly, and you will feel layers and layers and layers of discomfort and shadow, and you don't even need to put names to it, but it's just all in there. And so it's about facing and confronting that tendency we have to go outside, to look outside for truth when it's inside us. And it's such a deep addiction. It is so deeply entrenched inside us. I mean, it is so deep that it takes a huge epiphany or an moment of omniscience to see how addicted we are to not facing the way we feel. So face the way you feel, and you may find that there are higher, it's like when a man looks at a woman or a woman looks at a man in that way. You see a beautiful woman walk by as a man, or if you're a woman, you see a beautiful man with a six-pack or whatever it is, or it can be someone that just gives you that moment. If you really look at that and you really go into that, you see, what is it? I mean, what is it you really are looking for? What is it you want? What is it you're craving? And if you look deeply enough, you'll see that it's actually the experience of ecstasy. It's the experience of union. That is what you are really craving. It's the experience of release, of freedom. And ironically, you're not going to get it through going out that way. I mean, you'll get it in a, you may, if you're really good, might last a few hours, The addiction is outside, but when we take it back in, those same experiences come up through the heart over time. That's the tantra. And then the experience gets deeper and richer and more orgasmic and more ecstatic, and anyone who knows what I'm talking about knows what I'm talking about. There are planes of reality inside us that are so far beyond the ecstasy that we know through sexuality that it doesn't compare. So everyone in their own time.
A question from Allegra. What is the relationship between eating and the solar plexus? Do we eat to numb that solar plexus awakening?
Yeah, it's a good question. Many of us do eat to numb it. Depends on how you eat. And one of the things that you find as you become more aware of your solar plexus, as your awareness becomes more aware of your addiction to escapism from that feeling, you become more aware of your eating patterns. I mean, if you start to contemplate in real depth, you become very aware of your eating patterns, and you become aware of the unconscious patterns that you have developed. The way your body moves and the way you reach for that cake, or the way you go and you need that coffee or whatever it is. There's no judgment on it, but you become more aware of it in the moment that your hand is going out for that habit or whatever it is. So yes, we do eat to forget, but also we need to eat. And one of the things that I experience happening is subtle changes in my habits around food and in my diet as my contemplation gets richer and deeper, and I see, I experience that inner state of purity more, because then when you experience that, if you put something into your system, it takes that purity away if it's not the right thing. It actually might give you a moment of pleasure, but it takes away that other feeling which is deeper and subtler. And it doesn't take much to knock that energy off when you're putting food in there. So it makes you certainly more aware. A higher frequency makes you more aware of how you eat. And you will probably eat differently, but not all at once. That's usually not the case. It's usually subtle changes that are easier for the body and the rhythms of the body.
Jason asks, when and how will we observe the first signs of Homo sapiens metamorphosizing into Homo sanctus or light bodies?
When and how? I think I just told you how. How? How's a big question. Yeah, I mean, I gave the story of how. I haven't given the details. When, again, you can, when you start to contemplate deeply these things, and you contemplate them in an ongoing way, and you begin to contemplate or meditate on these higher truths, you will reach a state where your intuition rises to that causal plane, and on that causal plane are found the answers to those kind of questions. And rather than me give you my intuitions or my feelings now, I would just urge you to begin the process. I've created this whole gene keys process in order that we can prepare ourselves for this change, because it's coming. And in order to get ready for it, there are things we have to do. There are shadows that have to be transmuted. There are states that we have to pass through. And there is a discipline needed for that. And that's why I created the Golden Path program that takes you step by step into that process, using the gene keys as your contemplative tool. And as your frequency goes higher of your aura, and you begin to awaken more inside yourself to these other realities, then the answers to those questions either come or the answers become less important. Sorry I haven't answered you perhaps in the way you were anticipating.
This is a question from Carol Ann. Does the spiritual and physical bodies match the vibration of the siddhi at the same time?
Does the spiritual, say it again?
Does the spiritual and physical bodies match the vibration of the siddhi at the same time?
Not sure I understand the question. The siddhi, it comes about because of a mutation in the physical body, because of a higher activation of the DNA that's in there. So the siddhi needs the physical body in order to manifest, but it needs a refined version of the physical body to manifest. And that refinement takes time. It takes commitment, discipline, time, and grace. Not everyone has the good fortune to experience those things. But what I hope you got from the webinar is this impulse that is coming, that is just coming. This impulse of this higher frequency that is wanting to come down, and it needs clear, clean, purified solar plexus centers in order that it can awaken. So we have to work on that center. We have to bring our awareness there over and over. And I tell you, it's tough work, but it's very rewarding.
This is a question from Scarlett. What role does a 55 radiance play as we transition to the new root race?
Say again, what role does the...
Does the 55 radiance play?
I presume she's meeting the 55 in the sphere of radiance?
I assume so, yeah.
I don't know if that's what you're asking, but 55, if you have the 55th gene key anywhere in your profile, it is an obvious calling to this kind of frequency. And it doesn't matter if you don't have it, because we all resonate to it. And I want to keep on repeating this, that it doesn't matter what gene keys you have in your profile and what gene keys you don't have in your profile, because we resonate to all of them through the universal field, and they come in and out of our life through our children, through our friends, through our husbands and wives and mothers and everything. So they're there all the time, available to us. But obviously, if you have that gene key prominent in a powerful area, then it's something to really deeply contemplate and take in, particularly over time, and keep on contemplating it, keep on going into it. If there's something you don't understand, keep rolling it around inside your mind, keep taking it inside your body, and ask for the answers, or wait for the answers. And they'll come in time. If you persist, they'll come.
Rivka asks, where do you place the solar plexus in the body? Is there a bodily range?
Yeah, that's a good question. The solar plexus is anywhere beneath the diaphragm. You know, so it's another deeper question, because the solar plexus consists of various areas, and actually it's a trinity of diaphragms. You know, there's the diaphragm of the rib cage, there's the diaphragm of the pelvic sacral diaphragm, and then there's the urogenital diaphragm. And as you go deeper and deeper and deeper into those areas, you're going sorry, deeper and deeper and deeper into the consciousness of the fall, or of the deep shadow, or of the wound. So working anywhere in there is very powerful, but you'll find that it may become more specific to certain areas, and I would follow your intuition and trust your intuition in gently working in that area with your consciousness, with your awareness, and possibly with your hands if you're very, very gentle. Someone asked about the secret doctrine. I noticed, Madame Blavatsky. Obviously, yes, a lot of this information, some of this information came out of those doctrines of theosophy, which is where the Eastern knowledge started to move over to the West. And you know, I draw on a very wide range of transmissions, and I like to synthesize just what comes my way, and it seems to come my way in a very easy, graceful manner. So the right transmission comes just through my intuition, and I go, I think I need to go and look at that, and I go and look at that, and then it falls into place. And then as I contemplate deeper, another transmission from another culture might come in, and I go and look at that, and I research it, and then it falls into place. And that's part of my my contemplative process of working inside this transmission using the gene keys. How does this relate? I've got a question. How does this relate? There's some human design questions here. How is it related to 2027? I think it has a deep relationship to that date. Yeah, I think that is a date in which, by which part of this manifestation that I'm talking about will be here, arrived. Yeah, between 2012 and 2027, it's a period of deep incarnation of the Kalki avatar. Of course, I may be proved wrong in that, but I'll go on the record for it.
A question from Pavel. You talk about children and 3 7-year cycles in the Venus sequence. Have you any special recommendation to upbringing and education of current new children, as for example autistic?
Well, that's obviously a specialized question, and I don't feel that I can fully answer it. What I can say is that the new children coming in need, just like any children, a huge amount of love, understanding, and above all, patience. I think one of the things that we're not very good with is being patient and allowing them to develop at their own pace and in their own rhythms, because they're coming in to a complex world, very, very complex if you consider all the frequencies that I was describing earlier, and they have to digest and filter all that information. And obviously that's why it's very intense for an autistic person, and an autistic child or person is someone that just is open to all that information and hasn't yet learned how to filter it in a way that um, enables them to sort of live like other people, you could say. So the autism spectrum is a spectrum, and we're all, some of us are further over on it, and some of us are further over the other way. And wherever we are on that spectrum, it's just, that's part of the coding of our DNA. And obviously, if you're far over on one of the sides, then you need a certain kind of treatment. And I would say, I don't mean professional treatment, I mean you need a deep compassion and understanding. And the best thing you can give is be a virtuous model for the children yourself, and be clear and clean in your own inner being, and be honest with yourself, so that your frequency of truthfulness and innocence is transmitted to them and they will feel safe.
This is from Theo. Are there physical signs of the evolution of the solar plexus?
Yes. I can't answer that as a geneticist or a biologist or a doctor or anything like that, but I can answer as a human being. Your belly begins to relax. You begin to breathe back into your belly. Your breath deepens and comes back down into the belly and the abdomen, where it was when you were a child. If you watch a baby breathe, that's how they breathe. And the only reason we don't breathe there is because there's so much holding and tension, and there are so many layers of it in that area. So as we go deeper into that area, even though we will hit difficult periods, as we go through those breakthroughs, more relaxation will find its way in, and the breath will deepen, and the belly will become more comfortable, rather than being a place of discomfort, which it is for most people.
Okay, this is a question from Dana, and it's a human design question, I suspect. She's talking about the empty, undefined solar plexus in the human design system. How is it affected by the mutation?
A human design question is always a dangerous thing to ask someone like me. It's as far as I am concerned, that is a mechanical question. So the solar plexus, you have a solar plexus, right? In your, you have a belly, you have a digestive system. It's just the manner in which it responds and reacts to the environment. And so it's about the mechanics of how it's switched on and how it's switched off, and how it's affected by other people, and how those kind of things, how chemistry moves through your body and all of that. So in a way, it doesn't matter whether it's defined or it's undefined. The fact is you have one, and in there you will have the same wounding patterns as anyone else, but it'll operate differently. It'll probably operate more through your relationships than it will when you're on your own. So you'd really need the Venus sequence to really, if you have an undefined center, if those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it's a human design question, don't worry about it. But the Venus sequence is a very, very powerful system for helping you understand responses and reactions in relationships, and depending on how open we are. So I would really recommend that to anyone, specifically with an undefined solar plexus. We better have a couple more questions, Anton, and then bring it to a close. I want to do a few other things.
Sure. Well, this is a question about the dragonfly and the transformation process. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. You've mentioned it, so why not? What's the question?
Sorry, that was the question.
Oh, what was it?
Can you talk about the dragonfly?
Well, yes. As I said last time, I think it was last time. The dragonfly is a symbol of this mutation, because the dragonfly exists as a larva, that as a nymph, it's called, that lives underwater as a separate creature before it's a dragonfly. And it's a highly successful predator, a bit like human beings, and it lives in this underwater environment, this Maya in a way. And at a certain point in time, a gene is triggered, and it's somewhere in its biology, and it finds a stalk of grass or a reed, or it walks out of the water, and it's never done that before, and the moment it's out of the water, then the sun begins to work on it, and it goes into a mutative phase, and as the mutation occurs, the water element that's in its body actually creates the pressure, the hydraulic pressure, to push the wings and the thorax and snap the back of the larvae so that the wings unfurl. And the moment the water is kind of pushed out into those wings, it's vaporized, but what's left behind is a flying creature of resplendent iridescent color that takes to the air and has a completely different life. I was watching one the other day, and I was thinking, I wonder if that dragonfly remembers its past life under the water, when it was something else. I don't think it does. I think it's so different. It's a completely different entity, and it can't imagine. You can't imagine. So we're like that. We're that underwater creature, and we have another life that we can't possibly imagine. And it's the time of the solar plexus. It's the time of coming out of the water. The sun works on us, not the literal sun, the inner sun. And as it opens up, that's what happens. We begin to mutate. And we mutate to our full awakened consciousness. One more question. Go in randomly, Anton.
Okay. Last question from Sue. Richard, has your work been inspired by Baha'is writings?
Not knowingly, no. I'm not very familiar with that work, but I know it's a very deep, heart-opening work. That's all I know, but I don't know. No. So we have one more question, because that was a sort of non-answer.
I was frightened you might say that. I'm just going to have to find one. Does nature vibrate at the frequency of our heart? That is more of a comment, actually.
Yes, that's a truth.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the difference between the Lemurian stage and the coming stage in relation with animal-human consciousness?
The Lemurian stage and the coming stage. Well, they're obviously very different stages, because the Lemurian stage was an ancient stage in which we came out of the waters. But I suppose there's a similarity, because we're coming out of the Maya, And so there are these memories being stirred in us of when we came, when you emerge from those Lemurians, those first humans that became some kind of rudimentary form, whatever they looked like or whatever they were. Um, they were unfallen, and we have been through the fall. So when you've been through the fall and then you've come back up, you've risen back up, you're different from how we were back then. It's like your innocence has been deepened and refined through the experience of the world and the suffering. So but you regain your innocence at the same time. So it's kind of the old man coming full circle, or the old woman coming full circle and recapturing the youth, but also with this wonderful rich edge of the experience that you've come through. So for us, it's a completion of our evolution that's coming, and it contains all those stages, the memory of those stages, rather than there being this memory cut of the fall where we can't remember all those stages and we can't contact them. It's almost like you never remember beyond the age of 3. And yet if you could remember all those memories, all the memories were available to you, imagine what a rich person you would feel, because you would remember and connect with everything. And that's how we'll feel. So I think I know there are hundreds and hundreds of questions, and they're all probably very good questions. If you want to put some of them in an email, I'll do my best to answer some. I wanted to just give you a couple of exercises. I've given you one about the solar plexus, which is about purification. Another one I'd like to say is contemplate the ideal that we've talked about today. To contemplate that ideal of that perfection, that perfect human, and this perfection of the heaven on earth. Ambrose, Anton, you can lose the images now if you want, just for this last part. It's really a powerful thing to do, to build into your contemplation. It's built into every gene key. So as you're working with a book, or as you're working with your profile on the golden path, really contemplating those cities and putting them into the frame of what would my life look like through that city, and really bring that ideal in. And even though you may think you're fantasizing, it doesn't matter. What you're doing is you're bringing in the frequencies. You're making them more real, because you're allowing your mind, those walls, remember I said at the beginning, those walls of your mind with their opinions and their beliefs, and like, no, I can't do that, no, that's not me. You're bringing them in and you're loosening those walls so that you can begin to open up to these other possibilities. That's the first thing. You see, the first thing you have to do is imagine that you can be a Buddha, or you can be a Christ. When you begin to really allow that, then that's how it works. You have to know that you can. You have to know that that is you. That is your true nature. It wasn't just isolated incidents. It is for everyone. And the time is coming when that is more and more available. And the third thing, because you've got to have 3, is look for trinities. Is keep an eye out for them. Not just on the outside, but in your thinking and in your feeling. And there's always a third level to every decision. When you're trying to weigh a decision, to every view, there's always a third level. And it comes out of the transcendence of the other 2. Shall I, shan't I? Shall I do this? Shall I do that? I might get this, I might do that. There's always a third view. You have to be patient to see it come. And when it comes, the awareness comes with it, the truth comes with it, the answer comes with it. So look for these trinities in all kinds. I leave that to your imagination to find ways of doing that. But the more you look for them, more you'll see that they are everywhere. And it's very powerful because it connects you to the holographic cosmos. So I just want to finish with a short some closing remarks, what I call the quintessence. So if we just all put our questions away for a moment and just close our eyes. Take a breath. So I've told you this story for a reason. And the reason is because there's something huge occurring on the inner planes at the moment. There's an anticipation hanging in the air. But we have to be ready. You know, an ideal called synarchy is preparing to incarnate back onto this planet. And it's populated by higher beings, our higher selves, if you like. But those beings can only land in us if the vessel is pure. So we need to clean out the house before the guests arrive. And this is what the Gene Keys are about, and this is what brings us back to the Gene Keys golden path. This is why I've created this program. It's a program that cleans us out. It takes us into the specific shadow patterns that we each carry, and it transmutes them. It's a step-by-step process. It takes time, it takes commitment, it takes courage, because you have to do it alone and in your own life. And you will, of course, have support from those others who are treading the golden path beside you, and support from the invisible world where the higher aspects of our consciousness reside, and they will aid us. But it is a labor of love. A small percentage of people actually progress to doing the path, to doing the work. So you need to ask yourself, am I one? The cauldron is the solar plexus center, and that's where everything takes place, below your diaphragm. That's where the work is done. That's where the transmutation is taking place. So I urge you, whoever you are, if you're new to the Gene Keys or you're already immersed in this work, intensify your inner work, whatever it is. And if you're interested in working with the Golden Path, the program, or you don't know what it is, go to the website. Take step 1. Have a taste. It's free. It'll give you a taste of what this whole knowledge is all about, what this wisdom is all about. It's webinars, it's text, it's audios. It helps, it guides you, it takes you by the hand, and it takes you onto a journey of inner purification by aligning you to your true purpose, by transforming your relationships, and by opening you up to a whole new understanding of what prosperity really means for you. So it's a revolution, and its purpose is to prepare you for this next stage, this next breakthrough in consciousness. And that's what everything that I'm putting out is for. That's its purpose. That if you're ready, when you're ready to go on this journey and prepare yourself for what's coming. And I hope you've enjoyed the show today, and the story was interesting and inspiring for you. And I'll see you next time, probably be in about a month. Wish you all well, and happy contemplations.